Looks like we're being. Hey, everybody. Looks like we are streaming live on YouTube. This is Lions Roar Dharma Center Talk Openly podcast show. I'm here with my excellent friend Daniel, and I'm Jack, and we're just I feel really lucky to be here.
Yeah. I'm stoked too to be streaming on the Lions Roar YouTube channel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and what else would you be watching right now?
Oh my gosh, there's nothing better than this, right?
Yeah, no. I think the only thing on television right now other than this is the presidential address. And so I think you'd much rather be here.
Oh, is that happening right now? I
That's
didn't.
happening right now
Oh
and
my
it's
gosh.
terrible.
Yeah, definitely this is way better.
It's way better. Just like come
Yeah.
on over.
This is gonna be huge.
Yeah, right. Oh God. I readily admit that I have feelings of aversion that I will, yeah, maybe I'll do some Tara practice, some Vajrasattva practice
Oh
later.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it'll come up in our discussion as well. I think
Oh
that people
God.
are here
Yeah,
for
I
it.
think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and tonight, so we've been doing a four-part series. We finished with the third last time. We had talked about what did we talk about? We talked about the remedial action, right? And so in this purification process of the four opponent powers, we started out looking at, having regret for negative actions, uh, taking refuge, right, in holy beings, and also relying on other sentient beings for our liberation, and then doing that remedial action, that kind of purification, which could include anything from like traditional Dharma purification, also as well as like volunteer stuff. Just doing like Daniel was saying last week about the trash pickup, which was such a lovely story. And tonight, in the second half of our show, we're going to be talking about the final step in the four opponent powers, and that is resolve.
Final
Um,
and most important step.
it is so important and it requires so much will.
Mhm.
So we're going to get into it. I'm excited.
Me too. I'm stoked.
Yeah, cool. How you doing? How's your practice? How's life?
Yeah. It's fast. I've um I've had I was reading a little a talk that was printed out. It was one of Lama Jimpa's talks that was printed out and is available at the temple. I was reading it earlier, and it's always funny you find things that are so directly, applicable to your life situation.
Mm,
My training has been going quite well, and I've been, extending my sits a decent amount. Yesterday, I had this great thing happened where my two early morning appointments with my spouse and my daughter, two separate appointments, they both canceled on me. And I got to go and spend a few hours at the temple doing Tara practice and
yeah.
meditating for a much longer period than I usually would. Really quite wonderful. And
Mm,
so my that's just like part of like how my training's been kind of expanding, and it's like deepening, right? And there's all kinds of good stuff happening as a result of that. But I was reading in this little booklet in this talk about how as we do that, we increase in our sensitivity, right?
mm,
And that we actually, it's not that we enter into some kind of blissful state where nobody bothers us and everything's hunky-dory. In fact, we become more aware, right? And more
yeah.
sensitive to the troubles that are brewing all around us. And
And
I
within,
and
yeah.
within, truly thank you for that reminder. And so it's
Hmm.
been kind of interesting to see, like, on the one hand, there are these like kind of high highs associated with deepening my practice, right? Like a decent amount of like energy and
Hmm.
clarity and yeah, I don't know, other things that come along with it that I attribute sort of like that's positive, that's good. But
Yeah.
then I have days like today, which are just dog crap. Oh my gosh, like it was okay, so I've been having a little bit of trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
And then last night, I live at an intersection, and last night one of my neighbors decided to drink and drive, ran the stop sign. and smashed into another neighbor. It was a
Oh
very
my God.
loud crash. I ran outside to see what was going on. It was pretty clear that she was intoxicated. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. The cars were utterly destroyed, but nobody was hurt. The lady who crashed the car, she had her dog with her in the back of her car. Dog was fine. And so there was eventually the cops came and then they arrested her for DUI. And I
Mm-hmm.
heard it was all right outside my window, so I'm like
Mm-hmm.
trying to go to sleep and I all this commotion going on. I can hear, the interactions and stuff. And eventually like she has a son who's like 17 and he came on site and then they're like, well, we're probably gonna have to call CPS because you're still a minor.
Oh
And
my goodness.
yeah, and then okay, so all of this, and I'm like, oh, I'm having like on the one hand, I'm like, drinking and driving, terrible, there's like judgment there. And on the other hand,
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm pretty sure I did that once or twice in my life, and like
yeah, for
I'm
sure.
not proud of it, but I'm like, I'm not no saint in that respect. And
Sure.
then and just sort of reflecting on how much misery can be created by our pursuit for our desires, and wanting to
Yeah,
whatever it is that causes people to drink and engage in that kind of stuff, right?
yeah.
There was a lot of reflection, and then I was like, okay, it all was calming down. Tow truck driver was, getting ready to take the car. I thought that the kid had already taken the dog home. So
Mm.
I'm about to fall asleep. No, freaking animal services comes up with their truck and they have some
Oh,
kind of a device. This is the sweetest, most beautiful dog you've ever seen. It was such a sweet little dog. And then animal service, everybody was professional, but they were doing their job and, trying to protect themselves. So they were taking this scared dog and shoving it into the back of their truck, and it was crying and crying and crying.
oh
Oh
my
my God,
gosh.
I was so sad. It hurt my heart.
Yeah,
And then there was this ripple effect throughout my household, right? Like everybody was more agitated, so I didn't go to sleep at a good time, right? Then I
yeah,
woke up super duper early, go to the gym, and I didn't have energy, right? And was it
yeah.
foul mood, the foulest mood, Jack. I mean, no, I mean like real bad, right?
Yeah,
So I go out and I'm walking the dogs a little later in the morning, and I'm just like, dude, what are you gonna do about this? Like
yeah,
clearly your mind stream right now is agitated. And I had so much anger and disappointment and like I would say hatred even, towards
yeah.
like all the, oh, it's so bad, these people, blah, 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 whatever. And I knew that that was just that was, my state. And I thought, okay, how in the hell am I gonna, I want to practice the four opponent powers with this.
Mm.
But what do I regret? Right?
Mm.
I'm like, it's all their fault. And then I'm like, wait, no. I regret that I've lost sight of the spacious, clear, luminous mind, and that I've dropped into this samsaric, dualistic sort of way of conceptualizing self and other, filled with judgment and habitual patterns of nihilism and whatever. And I was like, I do regret that. I do regret.
Yeah.
And so then I practiced the four opponent powers with this and it was magical. It was truly
Mm.
magical. I witnessed the transformation of deep, deep anger and like loathing into something very compassionate, very gentle, very soft,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It was quite amazing. And so I again want to express gratitude to you for suggesting this topic and for allowing us to extend it out over 4 weeks because it has been so, so wonderful to work with.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Yeah, and that's awesome to hear the kind of direct and immediate results, right?
Yeah.
That kind of turning the mind. I'm wondering, when you kind of did the reliance part, did you also include like the very sentient beings that you had some animosity towards?
I did not.
You did not, yeah. I
No,
was just curious. Yeah. Sometimes
no.
I'll do that in mine where like if I had a specific person or even just like the car that I was mad at in front of me, like I'll imagine that and it like just kind of like I'm okay, these are also beings that I'm relying on, not just the,
Right.
the Buddha Dharma Sangha, but also these sentient beings that I was very mad at earlier.
I appreciate that. I'll do that next time because I think that I'm gonna have to do it a few times.
Yeah,
One of the aspects of this is not only did I witness that near immediate transformation in my mind, um, but I also noticed the return of the agitation and the anger later.
yeah,
So there
yeah,
are plenty of opportunities to practice, and I think I'll take your suggestion to heart, and next time I'll include ordinary sentient beings and not just holy objects in my.
yeah. And I'm not sure if this is like the traditional way of doing it, so maybe ask Lama before trying. But what I do in the reliance kind of section of my four opponent powers practice is first I'll start with refuge to Buddha Dharma Sangha, and then I'll do the refuge and enlightenment kind of prayer. So the one that includes that I'm relying on, basically relying on all sentient beings for enlightenment, or that, I'm trying to achieve enlightenment so I can benefit all beings. And so therefore I rely on them. And so I'll do that 3 times while I'm visualizing those very people that I
Mm,
was upset with. And I kind of imagine almost like not confessing, but just like owning up to like, hey, yeah, like I was upset with you, and like now I kind of supplicate to you,
yeah.
like, yeah, that kind of. So,
Yeah, yeah, I'm so thankful to you. I'm gonna do that.
oh,
I'll
good,
do that
yeah,
next time for sure. And
try it, yeah,
I don't I doubt that Llama would have any trouble with that at all. It sounds just about right, given that I've read some
yeah.
instructions from other teachers. Yeah. Speaking of visualization, on Sunday, I asked Matthew gave a talk and I asked him a question about
Right.
visualization because it's quite difficult for me. And one of the
Mhm.
blessings that has come out of that are multiple I got multiple feedback. I got more feedback than I imagined. I got some from Matthew. I got some from other friends
Mm.
in the Sangha who were like thinking about it and offering me suggestions. And I'm reading this book called Becoming Vajrasattva by Lama Yeshe, and in it
Ooh,
he discusses trouble with visualization and its root causes and what could be done to resolve it. And something is sort of shifting. Like already there's like a shift in my visualizations. And so I'm excited about that.
wow,
I'm like, yeah, something's
yeah,
happening.
that is exciting. I think I remember from that uh conversation on Sunday, uh, Matthew brought up that, if one part of the image is kind of standing out, like is more, a little bit more clear, to just kind of turn the focus towards that. And that's one that I've also found helpful, is just kind of like, okay, that part is clear to me. So let's just put the focus there. And then sometimes it'll just kind of, branch out a little bit. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think one of the things about it that I forget who it was, which teacher, it was something I read recently about visualization is like it's really like important that you're not using necessarily like the visual center. You're not like it's not your eyes, right? Like it's not in the same sort of way. And that
Yeah.
actually what I noticed is that when I kind of drop trying to force it, trying to create it myself and try to allow it to appear sort of on its own, that
Mm,
seems to be much more helpful than me trying to like mentally paint the picture or create the image of what I am trying to visualize.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I haven't tried that. Yeah, usually I'm just like, okay, like now I'm gonna see Vajrasattva.
Dude, but
So
I can't do, but my problem is, it doesn't matter who, like I could take somebody that I look at on a regular basis,
yeah.
right? Someone whose face or body or whatever I'm intimately familiar with and repeatedly, and I cannot visualize them. I was talking to Connor about it earlier today, our friend Connor, and I said, it's interesting to me that the only thing that I've been able to successfully regularly visualize with great clarity and sort of detailed precision or whatever is the Tara Madonna statue in the shrine room.
Yeah. That's
Which
so
ain't so
sweet.
bad. That's all right. I'll work with that.
That's all right. Yeah,
Yeah.
what a great connection that you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it so interesting that like it's so hard to bring to mind, um, that kind of image. And yet at the same time, I have such clarity when I am imagining like an argument that I want to have, or like some way that I'm defending myself, right?
It's
Or
so
like
real
some,
that you're there and you're reacting to it.
right. And it's like, oh my gosh, I want to use that energy. Like, how can I bring that into my visualization where I'm like, I have that level of like engagement and clarity, right? Because it is fascinating. Like, why did, like, how is that?
Yeah.
And it's because I have a mind that's, really afflicted. Um, it was kind of sweet. I was talking with Mama about visualization, um and how I sometimes have trouble with it. And he suggested actually imagining that your teacher's sitting next to you.
Oh.
That can be a form of visualization that you can do.
Hmm.
And that was very sweet. I've done that a few times, and it's just nice to feel close to Lama because I don't see him very often. And so it felt nice to sit next to him.
Yeah.
And I remember a few years back, I attended a Dalai Lama kind of empowerment event online. And it was right after this controversy with like they think it was like a doctored kind of image or video that the Dalai Lama got in trouble about, right? It was like this big kind of deal. And I just remember feeling so like connected to him in that moment. And I imagined him sitting right next to me, and that he was totally fine, right? Like
Yeah.
there was no problem, like there was no issue. So it's just like it was such a good reminder that it's like when I imagine my teachers, they can tell me, they can remind me how my mind could be in the moment,
Mm.
that I don't need to be reacting to that controversy. He's
Yeah.
not, right? Or at least not in the way that I would, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a pretty beautiful little visualization
Yeah, I
practice.
like it. I like the advice and I like the story as well. You one of the aspects of what you brought up is the heartfelt connection. I think that's I've heard that too, is that it's not as important to sort of see visually the visualization is not as important as feeling the presence and the connection.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, because we want to be able to feel that, like not just in our meditation, but like how Lama kind of describes, it's almost like this wind that can come in,
Yeah.
in our everyday like post meditation world, where we can feel that energy throughout the day, connect with it. So yeah, we don't want it just to be a static image. We want to have that like kind of that tantric element to it, right?
Yes.
That's like the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
energy. Yeah. Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Lovely.
It's fun stuff. So yeah, training, practice, all coming along very, very well.
Awesome. Great.
Lots to work with.
How
Um,
exciting. Good work.
what's going on in your world?
My world. I saw a llama yesterday. It was
In
so
person.
fantastic in person.
Mhm.
He was up here in Washington for a few days. And I think most people know that he's moving up here. And by incredible like luck or fortune or whatever, karma, like I moved to this place without knowing that Lama and Sabrina were going to be moving here, and then like found out when I told him that I was moving up here. And so I every once in a while he'll come up and I'm able to see him. We visit the land and see the progress of the house, and where he's going to be, and it's just beautiful. It's really a gorgeous place. Um, but it's really been clear to me, and I don't say this like out of wanting pity or anything, but it's very clear to me that like being around one's teacher in like everyday life is really, really powerful and important if you're able to have that.
Hmm.
And so really like use this time, right, with him while he's in Sacramento full time, to be with him as much as possible. Because his presence and the way that he carries himself with just kind of everyday things, those are teachings as well. Um,
Without a
and
doubt. Yeah.
and those are things that I really I recognize that I think it's been harder for me to progress a little bit. Not that I'm not progressing, but um, because I'm not around my teacher all the time. But I
Yeah.
do have that heart connection, right? I think it's maybe because I'm still a beginner, and so maybe it wasn't the best time to move away from my teacher.
Yeah.
Um, but most people in the world don't have this kind of access to their teachers. They maybe get to see their teachers for 15 minutes, like once a year, right?
Yeah.
And so really like we're so incredibly fortunate. And so yeah, take heart, take um take that to heart, that's I just want people to do that with him while he's here or in Sacramento.
Thanks, Jack. I
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying. It's true that being in the company of our teachers has uh, a ripening effect,
It
right?
does.
That are, that the effect of, having that sort of proximity and being that close to him, observing him in action, right? Receiving teach a lot of the teachings that that still carry forward and are really helpful for me are little seeds that he's just planted, not necessarily at like a Sunday service, right? And not even necessarily at darshan. Like there's just,
Yeah.
like you said, observing him in just ordinary, regular movements, right? Doing what he's doing, having a conversation with him, just, and all of a sudden you have this little seed, and that little seed kind of grows into something else. And
Yeah.
so the more that we're with him, for sure, the better. And you're very fortunate that you get to be what do they call it? Vine ripened, right? So
Mm.
maybe initially at this stage, maybe a little slower, but then as soon as he's up there, you'll have that incredible fast ripening effect.
That's very sweet. Yeah, I very much look forward to him being up here. And I know that he's going to be in Sacramento a lot too. So, he's not going away from Sacramento. We get to share.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking for, I really am. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your life experience once you have that, once you have him in your life physically more.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I have been like actively seeking more kind of Dharma community. Um I I live in like a weird area where like Seattle's not that far geographically, but it takes like 2 hours to get there because of all the water.
Mm.
And that's really where like all the temples are and kind of like, a lot of Dharma stuff. And so I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be hard, like to do Dharma in this area. But there's actually quite a bit going on. And I learned that there's a small community, very small, of Theravadan monastics, nuns, who live in Port Townsend, and they're coming out of winter retreat at the end of the month, and I'm gonna check out their. They have like a Sunday thing from 1 to 3, so it's right after our,
Ah, that's
temple. So
excellent.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, just that kind of connection with Sangha is
Yeah.
so important. Um, so yeah,
Ah,
things
how
are,
fantastic. That's
little like
wonderful.
openings, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Ah, I'm very happy for you. Will
Yeah.
you share some of what you learn or discover?
Will. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm hoping that that'll help this feel more like home.
Hmm.
Like Sacramento, I really feel it feels like home to me.
Hmm.
Um, Even where I grew up doesn't really feel like home. Like Sacramento's where in that area is where I became an adult and like, went to school, made a lot of friends. And so I've definitely felt heart achy for
Yeah,
Sacramento. So I'm hoping that these kind of like connections and whatnot will help me feel a little more grounded.
they will.
They will.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, well, shall
Well,
we do some Lojong? We've got to just train our minds, huh?
oh my gosh. My mind is like a wild horse. It totally needs to be
Yeah,
trained.
it really goes.
I know. Let me pull it up here. Just a second. I'm pulling up the random Lojong slogan page, and then I will share right now. As always, thank you, Dirk, for putting this together. We so deeply appreciate it. Wow. Okay.
Haven't we had this one recently too?
Yeah, we're getting it. Yeah, we're on a little bit of random repeat.
A random repeat. I love it. Okay, so 47, make the three inseparable. Choyam Trungpa says, your practice of Lojong should be wholehearted and complete. In body, speech, and mind, you should be inseparable from Lojong.
Mm. It's interesting. This is one of the points I was reading in the book Becoming Vajrasattva by Lama Yeshe. He was talking about why repetition, why you see, like when taking refuge, for example, why is it done
Um,
3 times? And he was saying it's because it's so easy for us to do things mechanically or kind of rote, and that by using repetition, the chance that we'll actually feel it, heartfelt, you know, the chances of that happening are greater if we are repeating it a lot, right?
uh,
Because, and you'll notice that, like you do mantras, sometimes like you kind of go away, and then all of a sudden you're
yeah,
like, oh, right. And you come back and you're like, what am I doing? And then there's this wholehearted sort of body, speech, mind connection where you are actually really in it. And then, of course, begin to sort of distract again away from it. And I think that that's certainly my experience when he says, when Trungpa is talking about, that our body, speech, and mind should be inseparable from Lojong, right? It's inseparable from mind training, which means that we're cultivating that awareness and we're conscious all the time of our actions and our thoughts. We're watching ourselves and
right,
doing things like exercising the four opponent powers when we know there's
right.
afflictions, right? So of course, right, it's not just it's a complete merging, right? Like you're saying, inseparable. It's not like something that you do, you don't just like, go to the temple and practice a little bit of meditation and mindfulness and hear some nice teachings and then go home and forget about it all, right?
Yeah.
That's like worthless. You shouldn't even have wasted your time. Go bake some cookies or something,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but really, like this I think is a core critical instruction, and one that as you continue to practice, I think becomes inescapable, right? If you really are mm, becoming, if you are living your life mindfully and you're meditating regularly, I think it's sort of like inevitable that this will kind of come about, right? I mean, I
yeah.
think that well, maybe not. I don't know how I think about it. I'll take that back. I know too many people who have meditated for a long time and aren't necessarily inseparable from Lojong. So
For sure. You know, something I was thinking about too with this one is it's interesting how like um they talk about like the progression from body as this kind of like coarse object, right? Like it's more solid. And then you get to speech and that's more subtle, and then mind even more so. And yet at the same time in this slogan it's saying that those must be inseparable. And so it's just interesting to think about that model not actually being divided. So how to bring together these both coarse and subtle aspects of our experience um, is really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that actually. I sometimes because I I think maybe I've overly identified with mental formations throughout my life. Embodiment has not been, it's something that's relatively new for me, right? To really sort
Mm,
of practice in and with my body. And one of the areas where that's showing up more and more is something that Lama's sort of pointed out a handful of times, and I think will continue to point out is um, trying to be too fast, trying to do too many things, right? And having
yeah.
this like, so there's like a high energy, but it's not actually tamed, it's not being used in a very beneficial way, right? And so it's kind of slowing down the body a little bit, become getting like really being grounded and in it, and then
Mm,
acting intentionally with the body, right? Like not just like doing things quickly and moving sort of like just through habit pattern, right? Because the habit patterns are not just of mind and speech, it's also our bodies. So I really appreciate the fact that we have this coarseness to work with as well, because it's something that
yeah.
I have not focused on, and now I think it's time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, how are you doing some of that?
Well, primarily by, interestingly, using the mind, right? So mind
Yeah,
training
yeah, yeah.
to recognize when I'm distracted or somehow focused with these mental formations, right? Our good friend Matthew Cruz, I think, has probably provided the most helpful um, tools, techniques, tips related to embodiment. It's a big, it's a big part of his practice and what
Yeah.
I don't know what he's helped me with. And so there's a couple of different ways of doing that. Most recently, he was just talking about, very simply, noticing our feet on the ground, right? Like
Um,
starting there. It's really,
right.
it actually, one of the things about it, the embodiment stuff is that it maybe actually seems too simple.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, like
for
we take it
sure.
for granted, and that's actually part of my problem is that, I take it for granted. I'm not actually intentional with it. And there's something really magical to really connect with breath or really connect with, the connection between the us and the earth or gravity itself, right? The feeling of, being pulled down and being supported at the same time, right? That's one of the
Mm,
things I remember him talking about that kind of hit home for me. And so what I do is I notice, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm not actually in my body right now.
yeah,
And then I'll use one of those like little tips or tricks to kind of come in, and it's so helpful to have
yeah,
balance between all three of these things, the body, speech, and mind.
yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. What do we got
So what we
here?
got here? I
Is
know
that
we've
two
seen these
bodhisattvas? No,
guys,
two lamas, two
two
lamas. Here
llamas.
we go.
Very cool. I wonder what they're talking about. Or maybe they're not talking. Maybe they're just vibing.
Uh, it's an administrative meeting, I think.
It
That is
must
so
be.
cool.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I dig it.
Nice. All right.
Um,
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for sharing what's been on your plate and then
yeah,
also, yeah, doing some mind training.
it's always fun to talk openly.
It sure is. All right, my friend. We are on our final of the four opponent powers, the power of resolve. And
The power of indestructible determination.
indestructible determination. So would that be like a Vajra determination, a diamond mind determination?
Vajra resolve.
Yeah, I gotta work on that. Yeah, okay. That this is an important one, right? So we've gone through the other three powers, imagining, you're kind of doing this practice, and we get to the end, and we've just done some Vajrasattva, feeling pretty good, right? Maybe feeling a little bit lighter, feeling good about ourselves, about the
Clean,
practice,
pure.
clean,
Yeah,
pure, right?
yeah.
Um, and then we have to like get up and go do our post meditation world. And we're going to be meeting all the same things that we, just got irritated with and, attached to and ignorant of. And so we're going to just have to keep purifying, 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 right? So with this practice, this fourth practice of resolve, we're actually trying to kind of uh, make a little bit more of an effort to notice when we have to go back out into the world. Notice like, hey, is my mind kind of moving towards that action that I just, purified? And maybe I can, back up, limit myself a little bit. And so resolve is really about making a determination not to do that action again um, for a certain amount of time. So there's a lot of compassion, I think, in how the teachers teach this, is that they're not saying you never, ever, ever can do this ever again, or you're going to hell. They're not saying that. They're saying, we want you to recognize a little bit more, become a little bit more aware of your actions, and just try and see if you can pull back from those.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to read from our temple's Vajrasattva practice. I'm not sure if this is the same one that is at the temple, but I find it really beautiful. And Lama actually, I think he put it in a 12-step um, kind of process. And so I think they do Vajrasattva at the recovery meeting, right?
No,
Or did
not
or was
times
it
I've been
Medicine
there.
Buddha? Sorry, they do Medicine Buddha. So my bad. Um, so this section on resolve, it says to make your confession perfect and most powerful, apply the power of not committing negative actions again. And then you say to yourself, guided by the wisdom mind of perfect freedom, from this moment on, without hesitation or reservation, I will abstain from all the errors that I can abstain from, and I will abstain from those that are extremely difficult for me to abstain from for 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute, or at least a few seconds.
Yep. Yep.
Isn't that precious?
It's beautiful. Yeah. I found when I especially early on, I would oftentimes show up to Vajrasattva practice just heavy, heavy with so much crap and habitual patterns that I felt were solid and non-transformable. And it always gave me a lot of hope because my mind told me, yeah, this isn't changing. It's not going to change. It can't change. And the solidity of it. I mean, it was these things, they were so powerful, they were so solid.
Yeah.
And what would happen is what you described, there would be this light, like sort of a lightening of the load, right? And a little bit of cleaner, like a night, and then there would be this like, oh crap, but I'm gonna have to go back out, and I just
Mm-hmm.
know this thing is gonna be there. I just know it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then we would read this because it's at the end, right? And it was like, you know, I'll abstain from those that are extremely difficult for me to abstain from. And then it goes 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute, or at least a few seconds. And I'm like, okay, I could do a few seconds.
I can do that.
I could do a few seconds.
Right, right. And what's so fun too is that like, you know, oftentimes uh that'll get the ball rolling, right? Is like, okay,
Yeah.
if I can do a few seconds, like why not a few more seconds? Ooh,
Maybe I
maybe
can
I
make
can
it.
try
Yeah.
like a few minutes or an
Right.
hour.
Right.
And so it kind of, yeah, it gets that motivation going, the momentum.
It does. It does. It starts it's adding energy, right? Creating that momentum. And it depending on the inertia, depending on the force of the pattern or the habit or whatever the error that is coming up, we there's this need for repetition. You got to keep doing it, right? Like that's
Yeah.
why exercising there's some discussion around Atisha, right? And he was really, really gung-ho about purification practice, so much so that it's like instantly, as soon as he recognized, one of his errors, he would just right then and there. He didn't wait. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't like he wouldn't like go like, well, tonight when I do the four opponent powers, I'll bring this into that practice. He would just like right then, as soon as you recognized it, start
Yeah.
practicing, right? Because
I
you
heard a story
go ahead.
real quick of him, even when he was traveling, like on his horse, like,
Right,
people would see him like literally stopping his horse and getting off to do a purification practice.
right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly,
Amazing.
exactly. And so the need for this, like, you don't want, because there's energy in the negative pattern for sure. A tremendous amount of energy there oftentimes. And so if we're trying to counteract it, then there's a need, to not allow it to gain. If you've kind of slowed it down a little bit, say by doing a purification practice like Vajrasattva, you've slowed it down, you've decreased a little bit of its energy perhaps, it is going to pick up momentum again, right? Because it
Yeah.
has that already. And so we need to do the same kind of thing, right? By repeating, do it again, right? And keep pushing back.
Right.
And then this resolve deepens and gets stronger. There's one of the things that I've read is that there's like these gradations of it, right? And that's definitely been my experience, is that it's even though we're talking about this Vajra resolve, this indestructible determination, there is a great amount of understanding conveyed by the teachers around the fact that it isn't indestructible initially, you know, that it starts with something, 1 second, a few minutes. That's okay. That's okay. Keep coming back to it. It does
Right.
work.
It does. It really does. And with that kind of resolve, I find that I become more confident in myself, right? I think that's part of it, is that with purification, um, and like the resolve not to do those actions again, and to, in fact, if we can, engage in positive actions, that this is building our confidence in the Dharma, and in ourselves, because we're developing these characteristics that have in a lot of ways been diminished, and to see that, like, okay, I feel like, I feel that spark of like compassion, or I feel that spark of love, joy, equanimity, and so forth. Those are really kind of the fruits of this, by engaging in kind of like a remedial practice, or yeah, having that resolve. It is kind of, it's that positive momentum, and we see the fruit of it. So yeah, it's like, um,
And if we
it's
oh, go ahead.
encouraging.
It is encouraging, and the exact opposite is discouraging, because if you don't do any purification, you don't continue to sort of develop this resolve, then your confidence in your delusion will also grow. And
Right.
and I'm not saying, I'm just speaking from my own experience on that one, right? That
Mm.
it's way too easy. The solidity of the delusions, right, of these negative actions grows and gets stronger. And that's one of the points that is made, is that, you know, it is it's important. I think on the one hand, this is it's important that it comes as part of this process, right? Because what we're talking about, it's really easy to be like, well, it's like a wish, or it's like a
Mm.
resolution. It's like, I hope it doesn't happen. I promise I'm not going to do it again, right? How many smokers, or how many people who have other habit patterns are familiar with that, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
and the thing is that because it's not an intentional practice, it's just a wish, right? It's not the resolve is not coming from wisdom, right? And so the practice is really about developing wisdom around these objects, these negative actions, like we were talking about last
Mm.
week, bringing them up and seeing them very clearly. And then it's just like they say, they use them, I've heard the metaphor of like swallowing poison, right? Like if you realize you took a sip of something and you realize, uh-oh, it's poison, you're gonna spit it out, and you're gonna swear, I'm never, ever, ever, like it's gonna be very clear. You're not gonna be like, well, I mean, like maybe. maybe I might try it again tomorrow, or
Yeah.
there's not going to be any of that. It's going to be very clear, and that's indestructible determination.
Mm.
You're not going to do that again because you're very clear about how bad it is for you and for everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and how do we, get to that point of recognizing that? I think that's an important piece of this is that, really having to develop some, alongside this four opponent power practice, developing some conviction in other aspects of Dharma, so that we know, like, okay, yeah, these things do lead to negative consequences for myself and others. And so, some reflections that I think are super important are, got to reflect on the unsatisfactory nature of samsara, right? That, like, okay, these things that I'm, lusting after or craving, they're not going to bring me happiness. They, in fact, bring me more pain. And I'm developing this kind of mind stream that is just constantly seeking pleasure, and I don't want to be there. Reflections on karma, right? That has to be there too. I still sometimes have like where I question karma, right? Like I need to do more meditation on that. But I know for sure that like um it's just logical, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes sense once I really kind of sit with it. But sometimes it just seems like because I'm, still a creature with very limited mindset, everything just still seems permanent, right? And so it's like, well, how could that have come from this, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So doing some deep reflection on karma, as well as I think, something that's really helpful for me is to reflect on my teachers and the incredible qualities that they have um, through their practices of purification, right? And to see like, okay, this really does work.
Right.
So those are kind of things that help me develop some confidence and conviction that okay, I do need to purify and avoid some of these actions.
Exactly. In the same very similar vein, when if you're in the throes of it or you're experiencing you're creating these negative actions, I find it sometimes helpful to imagine to see can I visualize my teacher or what or any actually of the teachers that I've known, for example, can I imagine Geshe Sewang, you know, having these thoughts of great hostility and anger towards people driving down the street,
Right.
too fast or running stop signs. Can I imagine him like wishing, death and eternal damnation on people? Can I? No, of
Right.
course I can't.
No.
I can't even, of course not, right?
Yeah.
Can I picture my own teacher doing that? Of course not. Well, why not? Because they're actually human beings as well, right? They've had to deal with all of these same kinds of states of mind and emotional, upheavals and whatever, the same
Mm,
kinds of things. And yet, as you said, as a result of their commitment, as a result of their practice, them doing these works, I can't even picture them being in the same kind of mental state, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah, it is very inspiring. And also just like that's such a great little exercise because it really just it made me laugh, right?
Yeah,
To think like there's absolutely no way.
right.
you know?
Yeah, you
Um
can't. I promise. Like you can't. If you like, that's what's kind of fun about it, right? Is
yeah.
like you even if you're able to even get a modicum of it, you feel like ashamed and dirty because you just know that that's not true. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so that is super helpful in kind of like developing conviction, right? That like
absolutely.
okay, I know that like at one point their mind streams were probably in they were in like a state that mine is in, right?
They've
And
experienced
yet
some of this, sure.
right, and that they've been able to get to the point where they're at, that they don't have the afflictions like, my really common ones that I pretty much have to purify every day. I have to do some kind of reflection and purification is irritability,
Yep.
right? Irritability is a huge one for me. And that doesn't mean that they don't get or feel irritability. Like I'm sure that there's times, right, that they feel anger,
Yes, of course.
irritability, right,
Yeah.
sadness, those are
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
human feelings. But it's like what is done with it, right? Like is there then kind of like um a negative thought about that person or like a kind of catty comment, like
Yep. Yep.
those are the things or even just up here, right? Like ooh like um a turning away, like a losing of bodhicitta, like
Right.
just kind of feeling. It might not even be a thought, but this feeling of like, um, that yeah, that's not how their minds go. Maybe they feel the
Exactly.
irritability, but it's
How
just
could
that
they not?
feeling.
Exactly. It's just like with Llama's. I don't have. I'm not going to reach for it, but the little booklet. One of the things he says is this, like, you're if you're enlightened, if you're this in this sort of Rigpa non-dual, awareness, you know, are there idiots still? Yes. Yes, there are some idiots doing stupid things
Yeah,
still. It's true. Like
it's just true.
that doesn't go away, right? We're not
Mhm.
negating the existence of that kind of stuff, but the perspective, the actions of body, speech, and mind, right, are quite different. And so it's kind of like I can imagine they, would like Lama would experience certainly the irritability or the anger, like the emotional feeling of it, witness
Mhm.
it coming up, and then be able to then use that energy in a very skillful way, right? Whereas like me, it goes into like wishing harm upon others and I mean, dude, I get kind of crazy with it,
Me
like
too.
sometimes when I'm
Yeah.
just like, like, dude, where are you coming from, man? Like, you don't
No.
do you really, like listen to yourself?
Yeah. Mine is like suspicion. Like
Oh,
yeah, I'm demigod realm kind of mindset a lot of times where I'm like, I'm looking for enemies, I'm looking for competitors, and it's just nasty. It is such a nasty mindset. And so that is definitely like if we're kind of going back to the resolve to not do something for an hour or at least a few seconds, that's one that's like that one's prevalent for me.
yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
one comes up often that I have to like this suspicion, this kind of jealousy or whatever. I have to purify that maybe
What's kind
yearly.
what's kind of cool about the stuff that needs to be purified. One of the things that I find like neat about it is like, how do you know that that's happening, right? Like even if you're somewhat like aware and paying attention, like I was saying with my example from today, I was like, I don't need to purify anything. It's all these assholes who need to purify something, right? But the neat part about it is that when I feel bad, when I feel anxious, stressed, when I feel dirty, you know what I mean? When I feel that, I can feel the negativity. It doesn't feel
Yeah,
good,
it
right?
doesn't feel good.
It's
Mm-mm.
like a dirty stain on something clean, It's just
Yeah,
and you see that, and that is a big old red flag. It's like a clear indicator, like, hey, now this is something that needs to be purified in your mind stream. What is it? Sometimes you have to go searching a little bit because we generally like to keep that stuff kind of in the dark, right?
yeah, for
So, like
sure.
we may have to go and look for it because if we're feeling that if that feeling is all right, it doesn't feel good,
Yeah, for
then we can be
sure.
like, all right, what is it? Where is it? Oh, there's my suspicion. There's
Yeah,
my judgment. There's my anger and animosity and all that stuff.
right. I think what I end up coming to a lot because there are times, right, where like as we've said, there's people who do idiotic things. There's people who do things that are harmful, right? And so it's not that we're saying that okay, I shouldn't have been upset that they did something terrible to someone, right? It's that I lost it in that moment. I lost my bodhicitta for them,
That's
and
right.
so that is where purification needs to happen for myself, is that I saw them do that and then thought that they were a bad, unredeemable person, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what the losing of bodhicitta is a really dangerous thing, right? We don't want to lose bodhicitta. Um, and so that's kind of what how I think about it is like, yeah, people do bad things, and I also still want them to be liberated.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
if you sit with it, you'll realize you really do actually want that. Like it's not
really.
you're not just saying it because you're a Buddhist.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like
Right.
really, let's please, like, can we just
Please.
please get liberated?
Yeah, I need you to be liberated. I need
This is
all
so
y'all, and
bad.
I need me. I need us all. Come on, let's
Right.
do this.
Yeah, Trump,
Ah,
Musk,
yeah,
please, please, liberation for you too.
please. Yeah, like I wanted. There's this quote from Lama Yeshe, who in Becoming Vajrasattva that I was hoping I'd get to read before we wrap
Yeah,
up here.
please.
He was talking about not underestimating the power of habits, right? And how it's really important to maintain vigilance. Like you don't, he was talking about it in the context of vows, but it has everything to do with what we're talking about, this resolve, right? And
Mm,
he's like it's like you don't understand the power of habit patterns. And if you let down
mm,
your guard, if you're not vigilant, if you're not mindful, then it's going to sneak up on you. Here's what he says. Instead of beating up on yourself when you break a precept, you should rejoice. Now, that's just that line alone, right? It really
oh,
shows a
wow.
tremendous amount of compassion. This is not how I have felt whenever I have, engaged in any type of negative karmic actions, right? I've always been like beating up on me. You're bad. You always, whatever,
Yeah.
right? No, he says, instead of beating up on yourself when you break a precept, you should rejoice. Unbelievable. I really meant not to do this, eat, or whatever it was, but my old habit snuck up and cheated me when I wasn't looking. Right? And he says, feel happy about the time you kept the precept purely and be happy to learn how your negative mind works. It
Mm,
helps you understand karma at its deepest levels by bringing to your notice the subtle way in which it expresses itself. If you didn't take the precepts, if you didn't make this kind of resolve, you would remain unaware of your negativities and would never know that they were there in your subconscious. Without
yeah.
understanding this, you will never be really happy.
Yeah.
And like
Wow.
it kind of rocked my world, right? I was just like, yeah, whoa, grateful that I broke a precept. I'm grateful, wow, like
Well,
what?
and that really puts that Lojong slogan on turn everything into the path, right? That really, so
Yeah,
including even our own negative actions into the
that's right.
path.
Right.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. You made a resolve and then you weren't able to maintain it and you were aware enough that you had not maintained it. You saw how karma expressed itself through you, right? You
Yeah.
you see all of this. You get the opportunity to purify and do it again. Like, what a
Amazing.
blessing.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that quote.
Yeah, it meant a lot to me when I read it. I was just like, that's beautiful. That's
Really beautiful. So compassionate. I
so
think, yeah,
we've
this
talked about this
practice.
so many
Hmm.
times, right? Between our teacher and actually all of the teachers, the way in which their compassion surprises us, right?
Yeah,
Like it always surprises me. Like I've always thought, like, no, but you don't understand.
I know.
I'm a
I'm
bad,
bad.
I'm bad, and I'm always bad, and no, whatever. And then there's just this overwhelming love and like something like that. Like, well, let's rejoice. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? No, what? You don't understand. I'm a bad guy.
So much love. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And this whole practice, is just so imbued with compassion, right? That like we want to be free from suffering. We don't want to hurt anyone else. So let's do this. Let's really like work to, change our course,
Ah.
right? Like we were talking about the satellite. Let's kind of just nudge it, keep nudging it, right?
Yeah.
So it keep goes to on that course that we want to be on.
Yeah. If it gets off the trajectory, keep nudging it as soon as you can. Not
as
like
soon as you
don't
can.
wait.
Yeah.
Nudge it as soon as you can, because if it keeps going, it's gonna get a little bit further off course, right? Like you
Right.
said. So, and this practice, so good. So good.
So good. Yes. Daniel, I'm so glad that we talked about this. This has
Yeah.
been really helpful for me. I've been doing the practice every night since we started, and it's really revealing a lot about my mind. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, same. And I'm super excited. I'm going to give a talk later this month on this very topic. And so thank you for helping me to prepare for that. I feel like I have enough sort of material and understanding of it, and now some good practice with it as well. I think
Yeah.
I'll be able to do that just fine.
Great. And for our audience, what day is that?
That's going to be on the 23rd.
Ah, I'm going to be in Mount Rainier on that day.
Oh, don't worry, we'll record it for you.
Okay. I dang it.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
so look forward to seeing it. Oh, I'll purify that anger or the frustration,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
won't be
It's all
there.
right. You've been with me throughout the whole thing. You already know what I'm gonna say.
Oh, buddy. All right.
All right, Jack. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Daniel. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Take
Jack.
care.
Bye, everybody.